And so all of that vision was not really complementary to another salaried job or getting back into the workforce. And so that just led us to start thinking about, okay, what could we do that was different? And we had this land material in front of us. And so we started going down that path and learning a bit more about the process, the model. We plugged into a community, we found a coach, and we decided to commit a year of ramping up a business. We put some money into it. And we've been 10 years in the business, and it's just grown every year. Nice. And so that was kind of the mix of things that happened. I mentioned I have older adult daughters. Well, at that very moment, they were both kind of going to college. And so I didn't have to think about providing for 4 people in a house. It was just Lygia and I. And we had a lot more freedom to what in my mind was taking a risk. But, I think I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs.
Welcome to the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Kidd, where every week we dive deep into conversations with real estate pros, business owners, and maritime professionals about their mindset and journey to success. Please help support us on our journey and our channel by liking, subscribing, commenting below so we can help you in your journey to success. How you doing today? Scott Kidd, Yacht Captain Investor Podcast. A friend of mine here, Mike Deaton in Colorado. How you doing today, Mike?
Great. Having a good time today.
All right. Well, for people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Gosh, I was born and raised in Texas, kind of grew up there, spent decades in corporate America, just went to university, got a job kind of climbing the corporate ladder, worked for some large tech companies, and in 2016 was finally on the other side of a layoff. And so I found myself unemployed for a bit, and we can get in a little bit more to the backstory, but just the long story short is chose not to go back into corporate America and found real estate. Excellent. And carved a lane out of a vacant land flipping for the last 10 years, and some other asset classes, multifamily syndications, some single family stuff, but land is probably 90% of what my wife and I still do. Yeah, we live here in the mountains of Colorado. We have for really since we started our land business. We decided to move and enjoy life on our own terms while we could do it and not wait for someday to retire. Mm-hmm. So we live here, a couple of older daughters that are adulting, and everybody's back in Texas, so we get back down there to visit ever so often. We love it here up in the mountains, just living kind of a life of our own making. So that's the nutshell story, and we can certainly dive into any and all of that.
Yeah, well, that's pretty great. It's just let's unpack that a little bit, like what got you to because I've been laid off from the corporate world myself and laid off from the boats, and that kind of brought me to do the real estate stuff too. And they're just kind of land flipping is, how did you get to the land flipping? Because that's quite unique, and it's a little more of a simple concept compared to a lot of these other asset classes.
It really is. At its simplest level, we're just buying properties under market value and flipping them. And so there's no repair work or contractors or any of the things that come along with either a single family or multifamily or commercial. But the genesis of it all, I would say before my layoff, I revisited Rich Dad Poor Dad, which most people in the real estate world have some familiarity with, and it awakened this spark that I should probably start looking at what things I can do outside of a salaried job. And so it kind of awakened this learning journey. And listening to podcasts like this, I heard a couple of different people that were doing land investing and flipping properties, and they were it sounded like a very low risk, very low barrier to entry. There wasn't a whole lot of money that needed to go into it. And the returns they were getting were crazy, like 2, 3, 5x their investment in a short amount of time. And so that just kind of spurred me to invest in a next level education. So I bought a toolkit that was just that. It was a toolkit on how to start up a land business and get going. It was good information. It wasn't, quite enough really to launch a business, but this was all pre-layoff. Because I was working full time, that toolkit didn't really, I maybe glanced through it. I just didn't really put any energy into it because all my energy was going into my W-2 job. I was traveling a lot. And so when that layoff happened, my immediate reaction was to get a job, and so I started interviewing. I worked my networks. I was talking to recruiters, and I had a lot of interviews with other big tech companies. At that time, I was with Microsoft in their operations side of the business, the hardware. So the laptops, gaming systems, that supply chain work. But I started talking to other, Tesla, Apple, Amazon, but these are all West Coast companies. This was kind of my problem with Microsoft, was that I was living in Dallas, Fort Worth, and they were closing that office and just really kind of cleaning up operations. And for me to go anywhere, I would have had to go to Washington, and I just didn't really want to do that. And that whole process really just left a lot of anxiety, a knot in my stomach, just the whole interview process. I mean, I know people have gone through it. It's not, I don't know many people that like going to interviews and selling yourself. Then there was just the unknown of what kind of company culture was I going to step into. I mean, you still hear, but back then you hear horror stories of Tesla and just, people having to grind and people leaving, and Amazon also. Most of the tech world in the US is kind of a what have you done for me lately type culture. And there's just so many politics and all of that. And so all of that really led to my wife and I to step back and think about, if we could design our own ideal life, what would that be? And we met each other in the workforce, and we spent like 3 years working together. We commuted, we took lunch, we spent a lot of time together, and we really enjoyed it. And we wanted to be able to spend more time together. We love to travel. My wife's European, so we go visit her family for 4, 5, 6 weeks out of the year. At least we do now. Back then, we would go for a week at a time if we could. And so all of that vision was not really complementary to another salaried job or getting back into the workforce. And so that just led us to start thinking about, okay, what could we do that was different? And we had this land material in front of us. And so we started going down that path and learning a bit more about the process, the model. We plugged into a community, we found a coach, and we decided to commit a year of ramping up a business. We put some money into it, and we've been 10 years in the business, and it's just grown every year. Nice. And so that was kind of the mix of things that happened. I mentioned I have older adult daughters. Well, at that very moment, they were both kind of going to college, and so I didn't have to think about providing for 4 people in a house. It was just Lygia and I. And we had a lot more freedom to what, in my mind, was taking a risk. But, I think I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and the mindset now is having a job is pretty damn risky because you're not in control.
Well, it most definitely is. You're not really,
Most investors don't know where they stand. Introducing Invest with Scott Kidd. Get your personalized investment readiness score. Multifamily real estate builds wealth through cash flow. You'll receive your readiness score, a personalized strategy. Join over 500 investors. Discover if you're ready. Start your free assessment today.
There's no such thing as job security. There used to be, and I think it's probably in our father's generation or what have you, where you got a job with a company or a company man. You work for 20, 30, 40 years, you get the gold watch and you do it. But I think that probably started ending in the 80s, 90s, during the dot-com stuff. Because I worked in the tech world in Austin, Texas in the late 90s. And if you weren't actively pursuing another job while you had a job, you were dead in the water. Because, there were a couple of places that they did literally one of them pretty much, I think, locked the doors as they laid everybody off, or majority of everyone. But I knew that was kind of happening because it went from 20 people to about 60 people, and 20 of them were vice presidents and executives. So I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but it was one of those things that, because I resonated with what you were saying, like they did everything to try to keep everyone that was working there, like ping pong tables, bring in lunch, and they have little events at the office so that you'd work late till whenever, and and all those things. And I can relate to that because it's kind of a false sense of security, like, oh, they really like us, but then the next day the hatchet comes down and everybody's gone. But I was wondering, I'm glad you made the jump into the land because for a lot of people, they either don't make that jump or they didn't make the jump, and you're still doing it 10 years later, and sometimes they don't make it. But how long did it take you to do your first deal?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So land cycle times are really quick, or they can be, because there's just there's no value add that has to happen. So the process is we're going off market. So we'll pick a market and we'll identify the property owners in the market and we'll reach out to them. Typically it's with a letter or postcard in the mail. Nowadays you can use text platforms, cold calling, email. There's a lot of different ways, but mail is still the most cost effective. But we're reaching out and we're making an offer of, let's just call it 40% of market value, somewhere around there, between 30 and 50%. It really depends on, the market, the deal, the size. And so when we pick up a property, we can immediately, same day, even now, we start pre-marketing when we know we have a deal in the pipeline, and we can sell it immediately. And so deals happen really, really quickly. Our particular story, we started it right at the end of 2016. We kind of started with some vigor in 2017, January. And as with anything, there's a learning curve. And so we had a coach and we were going through a program and we were filling our pipeline with deals. And so, the first things, pick a market, understand the comps in the market, get offers out. And so all that takes a little bit of time. We had some deals pretty quickly within 2 months. Our particular problem is Lidge and I just really struggled with the sales side of things. We're not salespeople. Mm-hmm. We were learning the process, kind of. Also, we teach people now to run land business, and you see it with almost every new client. Is there's uncertainty, and that comes through in your conversation with somebody that's a potential buyer, and so there's just this. You have to get familiar with it. So it took us a little over 5 months, I would say, to finally crack it and get our first deal. But once we did that, things just really gathered momentum and kind of took off from there. Over the last 10 years, our average deal cycle time is around 10 weeks. So we sell through properties really quickly. I will put a little asterisk on there. Last year, in 2025, the market was really slow in real estate in general, and we felt it in land. Land is usually not as high or low. It's pretty constant, but we did feel, our property sat for a bit longer. We had to find the right buyers. I think people were then, and still are a little bit, kind of paralyzed with, what's this economy doing? Do I need to hold on to all my money and, and stuff? And so there's still a bit of that, although it's spring. The market's picking up. We've sold a lot of properties in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, that's okay.
All right, we're back. I don't know what happened there, but
no, it's okay. I can just hit record again. Yeah.
So our first deal was around 5 months, between 5 and 6 months. But the average for us now is really just between 2 and 3 months. We don't hold properties very long. If we buy a really large, we've bought some 100-acre properties, some larger things, that takes a unique buyer, usually a hunter or somebody that just wants a lot of land. Those can sit longer, but we've never really held a property much longer than 11, 12 months in things cycle time. And then, we're making 2 and 3x our investment on average. And so even if you think about doubling your money in a year, that's
pretty good.
It's a pretty good ROI for most people.
Yeah. I mean, it really is, so your sales cycle is pretty quick, but I can see that you probably, like anytime you're starting something new, you got to get the reps in. And once you got more comfortable with it, because I know a lot of things that it's not hard, it's just new. But not being like myself, I don't have a deep sales background, but with what I'm doing with capital and sale, raising capital for, development deals and stuff, that's not my area of expertise. But I imagine the first deals that I was running through, it probably came across. That's why it was very, very tough. And you're absolutely correct. Last year was kind of a weird, a weird market, just for everything. And I don't think it was just real estate. I think it was everything. And it's still kind of there, because everyone's kind of hesitant to see where everything's going.
There's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
There's just, inflation's creeping back up. You've got the whole geopolitical issues going on. Then you've got AI coming in and disrupting everything. And so, there's a lot of noise out in the media space, and it's not super positive, a lot of it.
I always try to advise people that's kind of like you're saying, filter through the noise, but also like when there's in times of uncertainty, take another hard look at real estate, because it will keep you through a lot of things. Like, for instance, what you're doing, like land is just another unique way to do it. People can do triple net leases with commercial space. They can do development, just rental property, Section 8. And each one of these, there's just so many different ways to do it. And if you can hold on through all these kind of weird times, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, real estate, and I'm glad we got into it personally, but there's, particularly in the housing sector, there's just such a demand for housing that as long as you have the ability to go a little longer in your investment, right? If you're buy and hold, those kind of things, and if you set things up correctly, at least on the acquisition, just make sure you get the right kind of debt, you're in a healthy market. There's very few things that can really upset that dynamic, because housing, I mean, the population is still growing. I see all kinds of figures, but there's tens of millions of housing unit shortages. Obviously, that's market to market dependent, but it's just such a good play that I think, housing in general is a good long-term play. Some of these other asset classes, okay, they can be more subject to office space, commercial, those kind of things. You can get up and down, but real estate, more than anything, I would say, is one of the best risk manageable type asset classes. And so in land, even within
what if
that,
you could buy your first investment property in just 30 days? With a proven playbook built by a pro with 25 years in the game, it's not just possible, it's a plan. Scott Kidd's complete bundle gives you everything you need. 7 professional tools, delivered instantly. No fluff, no guesswork. Just the exact roadmap to your first property. From Yacht Captain to Managing Director of Capital Markets, Scott Kidd has navigated deals most investors only dream about. Now he's handing you his full playbook. If you're a high earner who keeps researching but never pulling the trigger, if you feel overwhelmed by the process, this was built specifically for you. Virtual walkthrough guide and the napkin deal calculator. Inside, the 30-day checklist property locator playbook. By box builder, market scorecard, agent vetting script. And right now, free bonus access to all tools, including the Portfolio Investor Clarity tool. Visit investwithscottkidd.com and get the bundle today. Your first property starts now.
And even within that, because of the way we're running the business model, and there's just so many fewer variables, like you don't have to worry about rents going up or down. We don't leverage our business. We kind of use our own capital. And so there's no interest rate debate, utilities, insurance, all the stuff. I mean, everything that comes with the baggage of any other type of asset class is not there. So it's really just...
I would imagine, just off the top of my head, your major expenses are probably like transfer fees and taxes probably are the only real hard costs that you have to really be concerned with, right?
Yeah, it depends on it depends on what type of deals you're doing and how you set up your business. Outside of, we directly purchase the properties there's other ways to do it, just like in housing. You can trade the paper, you can put options down, all that stuff. But outside of the land itself, most of the time we will use a realtor. And so there's a commission there, 10%. Then title companies come into play, but there's ways around all that. We do a lot of deals ourselves. We market it, sell it, and we don't use a title company. We can close directly with the county. And so there's a way to mitigate those, but we typically do deal sizes that are large enough that we gladly outsource some of that. The title company does the due diligence and they manage all the paperwork. Whoever the other party is, the buyer or the seller, has a bit more comfort level because there's a professional company in there. They're holding escrow, and there's different things that happen. And then, realtor, I mean, if they want to do the legwork and find a buyer, and I'm happy to pay a commission for somebody there. So
I am too. There's a lot of people that they flip houses and stuff, and they sell it themselves and all that stuff. And I said that's fine because they have a better sales background than me. But it's like I don't really want to do the legwork because I want to go into the next thing. But I'm not flipping houses. Is not my area of expertise either. For me, I wouldn't know where to start or finish. I could probably do the rehab part, but all the other ins and outs of it, you really got to have a lot of reps. Like what you're doing, there's obviously the learning curve was pretty steep initially. What would you say was your biggest hurdle other than the sales part of it?
For us, I would say our biggest issue was just the mental side of things. We both came from salaried jobs. We had worked for decades for somebody else. And so regardless of how much agency you have in a job, you're still working somebody else's agenda, setting goals, related to the company and stuff. And so for us to pivot to no schedule, no boss, and really running our own company, it was a lot of the mental side of the business. The tactics of land are really very simple and you can learn them pretty easily. It just comes down to doubt when things get in there, uncertainty of, like I said, on the sales side, making sure, just kind of all these little things. And thankfully, I have a big operations background is kind of what I did. And so setting up business structure and cadences and KPIs and all that was good. But it was really just, how do we discipline ourselves to do the work that needs to be done, to focus on the signal and not the noise, to push through resistance and obstacles. And when we were starting up our business, I mentioned, it took us 5.5 months. Well, we had a peer group, like we joined a community of other people that were starting land business and we watched them have success very quickly.
Oh, cool.
And so we'd be like, okay, what are we doing wrong here?
Yeah.
And all those doubts start to creep in once you start comparing yourself to other people. So it was that for us. And that's quite honestly, like about 2 years ago, we started our own coaching program. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason we did it was exactly that. Like I wanted to give the help in that aspect in addition to the land business because it's what we needed. And I think, a lot of the programs out there deliver the tactics. They just don't really help with what needs to be done because every client we work with, they face a moment of doubt or uncertainty, or they want a second set of eyes looking at, did I get my comps right? Is this a good deal? Should I do it? And those are the things where it really can help accelerate your path when you have a good coach in your corner that does things like that.
That really, I know that's helped me, and I wished I would have, younger days, I would have gravitated towards a lot of these people sooner, because I'm, from that generation of you got to be able to figure it out. You got to be able to independent and do it yourself, which no one that's ever built anything did it by themselves. So that was just a line that they said, pyramids weren't built by one guy. Microsoft wasn't built by one guy. It wasn't just Bill Gates. Steve Jobs didn't build Apple on his own. Although if you asked him, he probably would have told you that.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a big takeaway of mine from this shift into entrepreneurship is I also share I grew up with a character and a mindset of do it myself, go it alone. If you ask for help, you're weak or something. Yeah. And so I kind of grew up with that culture as well. Yeah. And I don't know what that comes from. Like my parents didn't necessarily drive that, but I'm a first child. My parents were very achievement driven, like academics, sports. They didn't really, academics they pushed very hard, but like other things were just more feedback. Like you do well, you got great praise and feedback. And so I think I just internalized this, but since becoming an entrepreneur, the corporate world doesn't necessarily reward taking risks and failing and all of that. And so now entrepreneurship does though, right? It's about testing, failing quickly, iterating and doing all the things. And that's probably been one of my biggest learning lessons over the last 10 years is just trying to let go a little bit and be more comfortable with testing something, try a market. Okay, when you spend a little money, it's okay. And it's easier to do when you have a safety net and cash flows working. Yeah. There have been times in our journey where things get tight and it's like, okay, now it becomes a bit more impactful if you make a mistake or something. But that's really kind of a big lesson just in life and entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah. And, we've always been taught that, to be risk averse and stuff, to go to the safety, that's, it's always, that's why our brains always kind of go, what's the worst thing that can happen? But, what I've kind of, over the last 10 years, kind of thought about it as, well, what if this all works out? I always ask myself, when I start asking those and start going down that rabbit hole, look at the other one, like, what if this all works out? Well, this is going to be amazing, or even if it halfway works out, this is going to be great, and so, but, looking at the corporate world, really, like we were just talking about, is that it is very risky because you don't know if you're going to be there tomorrow. coming from the yachts also, you don't know. You're here today, gone today.
That's interesting, yeah.
It's a part of a thing, and you'd think, hey, you're working on a wealthy family's toy or whatever. You think they have enough, they're going to keep you around forever. But, life happens to them too. Like they get divorced, people pass away, their business doesn't do well sometimes, or they just lose interest, so, that these things happen. So life happens to them too. So, the yacht is the toy. So it goes away first.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the whole point. Is regardless somebody's in a good position or not, you're at their mercy, right? You're not in control of the situation. You're relying on somebody to say, yes, let's continue, or hey, I'm going in a different direction. And that's just really what's been more comforting for us in having control over, okay, if we need more money, then we need to find a way to do more deals, or we need to work our leads better, or I can almost directly control the output by just either doing more of something or doing a better job.
Are you investing blind? Most passive investors don't know what questions to ask, and it costs them dearly. That's why I put together 125 essential questions, the ultimate due diligence checklist for apartments, syndications, and funds. Cover every critical area: the operator's track record, the loan structure and refinancing risk, property condition and capital needs, market demographics and competition. Ask things like, how many assets have gone through a full cycle? What is the loan-to-value ratio? What is the break-even occupancy? This is the checklist sophisticated investors use, and now it's yours free. Get instant access at investwithscottkid.com interactive. Trackable, exportable to PDF. Protect your capital. Invest with confidence.
A better job doing something, or both. And that's just been the biggest epiphany for me is I have so much more control. There's a lot of anxiety that can come with it, but as long as I'm taking action, I'm usually getting the result.
Yeah, usually when you start taking action, the anxiety goes away because you start getting into it. And it sounds like you being an operations guy, as a captain, I'm kind of an operations guy as well.
Yeah.
Like you have a lot of different levers to pull and people to put in different positions to where, like, hey, maybe we need to double down on the sales. We got quite a bit of inventory here, and why aren't these moving? Maybe we need to just chop, kind of thing. But I would say that's pretty interesting that you can either double down on the leads or the sales, or refine your operations more. And a lot of people don't. They always think, go completely on the expand the income side, which I think a lot of times in the safety mindset we have is we try to cut expenses, but at a certain point in your own life, it becomes unlivable.
Yeah, I worked, like I mentioned, I spent a few decades in corporate America. It was kind of always in operations. And so when I started right out of university, I got a job with Motorola, and they were like really the king consumer electronics company at the time that I was with them. And I caught them right at the peak, and then it kind of took a turn down. Same with Nokia. I moved from Motorola to Nokia mobile phones, and we had a huge growth curve, and then things flattened and turned down. And then a little bit the same with Microsoft in the operations side. But I could feel it every time that there was a little bit of a contraction. I mean, I always worked in operations, which is an expense. Yeah. And so always started cranking down, hey, how can we cut costs? What can we do? And I watched the sales and marketing teams going to playoff baseball games and hosting clients at concerts. And, they're just like, dude, I have these big budgets. Meanwhile, we're like figuring out, can we get one ply toilet paper and use that in the bathroom? Or
can we all share lunch today?
Yeah. It's just like, but yes, the expense, I am much more like I have, and ever since those days, I was like, why don't we just figure out how to make, more money or whatever? And it's not always that easy, right? I mean, especially in big consumer electronics companies. But you and I, in our own businesses, like, okay, I can do an extra deal or two. I can bring in some extra coaching clients. I can do things. There's a lot of leverage that can be used financially, but also non-financially. Yeah,
your social network levering and of your network, of your people in your life is really helpful. And like on the expense side, you can only cut so much. But on the income side, there's a lot more leeway of how far you can go, on that side. Whereas, like I said, if you cut down too far, it becomes unlivable, or the business, you can't cut the sales because you got to get the income in. You can't cut, but you can't cut a certain amount of the operations either, or else you won't be able to deliver the product, or and everything else. It's always kind of a walk we have to walk to make things work.
Yeah, there are always expenses that can be trimmed or optimizations that can happen. I mean, every time we look at our business, right, you have monthly subscriptions or annual subscriptions or whatever that you're like, oh, I didn't know I had that, and then it renews. And
we've been paying for these network groups that we haven't been there in years, and stuff like that, and things, a gym membership that I've never used. There's always stuff like that you can trim, but at a certain point, because I had a friend that he was a financial advisor for many years. He's like, well, you want to live a certain lifestyle, that's what you work for. And if you're not living that lifestyle, you really need to increase your income to where you can afford that, provided it's not outrageous, but you don't want to cut down to where you're living like a miser, eating, 3 meals of oatmeal every day, unless you have to, to get through those.
Yeah, we do what we have to do.
Because sometimes that's the case, but it made a lot more sense to me that way, that you don't want to cut away everything, because then your kids are going to hate you, your wife probably really hate you.
Yes. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, one thing I was going to ask you in dealing with land, I've received this question quite a bit, is like, how do you handle your tax strategy with the land, with having so many different sales and transactions throughout the year? What do you do to plan for those taxable events?
Well, yeah, this is a great line of exploration. So when we started our land business in 2017, let's say, it was a startup year, and we put seed capital in. We were acquiring inventory, so that was a startup year. The next year was a growth year, but by that third year, we made a lot of money. And it's really the first time that I have experienced taxes as business owner. It was a big tax event.
Oof.
And so that actually is what spurred me to get into other forms of real estate.
Nice.
And in that time, I think Tom Wheelwright might have just come out with his book right then, but I went through Tom Wheelwright, who's Robert Kiyosaki's tax advisor. He published his book, I don't know, some kind of tax advantages for the wealthy or something. But, he was talking about the benefits of depreciable assets, be they real estate or energy products or different things like that. And so that moved us into commercial real estate deals. And that's where we started investing in multifamily syndications. And we are real estate professional status, which means we're spending a certain amount of our time and we get our income from real estate qualified activities. And that means we can take unlimited depreciation. And so or not unlimited, but we can take all of the depreciation that we get.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're a salaried job, you're limited more into different categories. And so that is really how we manage year to year, which is great because land is a huge cash flow engine. Like it really produces a lot of cash flow, and we're able to then park that into other types of assets. And so whereas the land model, it's a flipping model, right? If we're not doing deals, we're not generating income and cash flow, but then we can park that into other assets, which we've done some syndications, which is really a lot like flipping, right? I mean, you're acquiring something.
The hold is a little bit longer.
There's a 5-year business plan or 7 years or something.
Yeah.
And so, we rethink a little bit more our longer term strategy, but leveraging assets like that is really what we're doing to, we haven't paid taxes in 5 or 6 years since we started really divesting into other depreciable assets. And that's kind of our 1-2 punch.
Yeah,
in doing that.
I've noticed that the people that are successful, and I'm not a tax advisor or anything, everybody's got to consult their own professional on that.
True.
On that. No, because everybody's got a different way, and I'm no expert by any means, but I do know that successful people, they always have some kind of, like you're saying, some kind of cash flow engine, whether it be another real estate thing that's transactional where they buy and sell products, or some type of thing, whether it be land or whatever. And then they also have the real estate side. Like we deal a lot with the orthopedic medical centers, ambulatory surgical centers, where these guys, they have the business, which is a surgical business, and then they get into they buy and we build out their medical business for them, their building, and then they take the depreciation and everything for that, so that offsets it because they are business owner and they're in that, and you bring up a great point, the professional status, because then you can take that that to offset all of your other gains in your other business because you're a real estate professional. And a lot of people get that confused or conflicted because they don't understand that a lot of times by the end of the year, they aren't able to offset all of that. They're only able to use a portion of it. So that's a great strategy. And I think I've seen it more and more where people have, they're buying the warehouse. They're in some type of flex space warehouse and they have the opportunity to buy the warehouse. And then that just kind of takes them to the next level because the business has to pay rent somewhere anyway. So why not buy your own building, get the depreciation and everything? And I think, real estate opens up so many different opportunities. It obviously has for you in many different ways. So what's next level in the next 5 years for you guys?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we laugh, my wife and I. Land is not a passion by any means, right? But it's a vehicle to a lifestyle that we love. Yeah. I mean, we live here in the mountains. We set our own schedule. For me, I am really focused on growing our coaching business in land. And so that's a pet project. Even in my corporate days, coaching and mentorship was the thing I enjoyed the most. And so I really love working with people and helping them achieve their goals. Yeah. And so for me, land is that outlet right now. We have a few different coaching options and we work with people one-on-one. We have some group options. I'd like to expand that at some point into a broader avenue. Yeah, but I haven't really done that just yet. But I think, today's world is really this is probably the biggest event in human history. This AI coming in, technological change, the workforce is getting totally disrupted. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to help people find that transition point to start stepping in. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people just entering entrepreneurship and the gig economy, and things are changing on their own. And so the younger generation is a lot more comfortable, I think, with at least in bigger numbers. Like I have 2 adult children and they're both thinking a job, right? They're kind of going down there. But I do think there's a big transitional point. And so, if we're talking 5 years down the road, that's something that appeals to me. I just haven't quite formulated the business plan that I want to go after. I also want to take advantage of AI personally in some capacity, just to take advantage of this shift. I use it heavily every day in different capacities, but I still feel like I'm
I go down the rabbit holes of like, wow, I really don't know anything every time I do something else, but I've started trying to solve one problem at a time, and I've played around with these AI agents and stuff, and that gets you down all these other rabbit holes. But I can see you doing some good high level coaching with specific people and stuff, because I can see it. I can see you kind of lit up a little bit when you start talking about it, because I've kind of thought about it myself, but it would only be with like select certain people that I would want to work with and stuff like that. And I always thought that, because I did the disc profile quite a while back, and it said I was a coach or a teacher, and I've actually on the yachts and in some real estate capacity, I've trained probably. I've had 5 first officers that are now captains, and a bunch of other people that I've kind of mentored and stuff. And I really enjoy that part of it, because I don't want people to just get to my level. I want them to be able to go beyond what I'm doing. For me, they should just be getting started at me. They should be, I want them to go conquer the world or whatever, because then that makes me very big sense of pride for stuff like that, because especially when I see how well these people are doing, just because, it didn't take much for me to just see somebody else doing something, and then to get a little bit of encouragement goes a very long way. But I can definitely see you doing that for sure, because I see you getting excited about it, and you'll figure out how you're going to do that. But like for a lot of these things, like for me too, like it's like you say, like land is not really a passion, but it allows you to do your other passions, and that's where it makes it easy, because you understand it. But
it does, and don't get me wrong. I mean, we have over the last 10 years, like we work on both sides of the equation, and so we buy properties from people, and 90% or more of the time, we are helping somebody out of a situation. They're kind of feeling a little bit stuck or something, and so we're providing them cash for a property, and many times we're helping them out. Like they don't know how to work through divorce or somebody passed away or whatever. And then on the sales side, we're providing opportunity for people to own land. Probably, I don't know, 75 or 80% of the land that we sell, we own or finance it. And so like if people don't have $40,000 to buy a piece of property outright, we'll finance it for them, and we'll have a 5 or 6 or 7 year promissory note where they're paying us. Essentially, it's like rent income. And so we have a large monthly recurring revenue that comes in from that. But we've afforded somebody an opportunity to own something that they probably weren't going to be able to do on their own, right? They couldn't get a bank loan or didn't want to for some reason and stuff. So it's very rewarding in that way. And also the coaching aspect really kind of helps as well. But yeah, it's not like we woke up and said, let's buy and sell land and and do all the things.
Well, no, that also brings up another point that, you're getting that long-term income by doing that note. And that gives you that stream of income. So that also stretches out the tax structure and lowers your gross income. You're not getting that large capital gain for that, selling that outright. Although that's great, but then also you're diversifying because you're doing multiple different ways of selling the property as well.
Right. Yeah, it opens up the pool of buyers for one, and so we're able to sell more properties more quickly. But exactly to your point, it does, we can allocate our sales dollars out into the future. And then on top of that, it helps us ride through any peaks and valleys in our business because, I know we've got things covered, things are coming in, there's cash flow working. And, even today, if a property's not moving, whereas in our early days, we might start discounting, really giving discounts. Now, the buyer's going to come out there. So we'll just hold it and stuff. And so, we started out with that strategy, and I'm grateful that we did because it really opens up. When you have like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you have your basic needs covered and things like that, it really opens up the opportunity to be able to do other things, contribute, explore other business opportunities, and things like that.
Yeah, it gives you a lot more options and opportunities at that point. Well, this has been really great, and I appreciate you coming on. What's the best way for people to find out about Mike Deaton and everything that you and your wife are doing and your land flipping business and other ventures?
Yeah, I'm most active right now on LinkedIn, so people can follow me. It's Michael B. Deaton, I think is my handle. Other than that, our website is flippingdirt.us. And if you go to flippingdirt.us, and if you'll go to flippingdirt.us/freedom, it's a bit of a landing page where I have some resources. There's different ways to get in touch with me if you want to email or set up a call or anything like that. That's really the central onboarding type place because people have different ways they want to outreach. But those two are probably your best bet. I also got a couple of books that I've published on one's on our model of flipping dirt. And then I just recently published another one on, flipping dirt with little to no money, which is for people that have a little more hustle and sweat equity.
I have that one, and I've read part of it, then I got back on the boat. So I'm going to finish it up when I get back home just because.
Good deal.
Pretty good. It was easy to read. It was in my language, so it spoke my language. So
try to keep it simple and approachable and very practical for people that can't afford coaching or to do bigger deals. And so that was I had enough people ask me the question that I decided to go ahead and just package it all up, put it out there.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on here, and I look forward to following up with you in the future and seeing how things are going, seeing how the build out of the coaching program and everything else goes.
Likewise, Scott. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm Scott Kidd, the Yacht Captain Investor Podcast, and this is a quick reminder that the best investment you can make is the one you make in yourself, so invest heavily in you, and we'll see you guys next time.